we are sitting down with Michelle, who taught fifth grade math in Philly for 8 years. So it's graduation season. If you have a little fifth grader, big fifth grader, going into middle school, that's a big transition. Math is going to get harder. So today we are talking all about middle school math readiness, how to know if your fifth grader is going to be ready to make that transition into middle school math. So Michelle has taught over 150 students math. So she has seen a lot, she has taught a lot, and she's going to share insider information as a former seasoned fifth grade math teacher. For any parents wondering exactly what does middle school math readiness look like, what do I need to do? This is almost going to be like a parent-teacher conference, but you don't actually have to go to school.
Right.
So, all right, make us laugh. Tell us a story about teaching the fifth grade.
So my favorite fifth grade math moment, and as you can tell, I wore my math dress because I liked to channel my inner Miss Frizzle when I taught.
Very elementary school teacher.
I was. I introduced the game 24. So if you're not familiar, 24 is a game where you get 4 numbers, and you can add, subtract, multiply, or divide them, but you have to get the number 24. And you have to figure it out, and then you have to explain your thinking. So it's very involved.
This game would stress me out.
I love it. Love it. It was my favorite game to play when I was in elementary school, and then I introduced it to my fifth graders, and they fell in love with the game. They went nuts. They organized a March Madness style classroom-wide 24 tournament. And then as kids would get knocked out, they would become the hype squad for that kid that just took them out of the tournament.
Oh, it's so fun when games are working in class, and I love it.
It was with my first class of fifth graders that I ever taught.
And you're like, I'm the best teacher ever.
They were such a good class. It was wonderful. And they're cheering. It's down to the last 2 kids. One of them knocks the other one out. And they're like, oh, good game. This was good. And everybody's like, oh my God, he's a math champion. It was
so educational.
It was a really wonderful math moment.
All right, let's get into the weeds here. So we're talking about something that a lot of parents wonder about, should be wondering about. Is my kid actually ready for math? Do they have the foundations? Are we going to be okay in the future when things get hard? What does middle school math readiness look like? There's a lot of pieces to it. Hard words, expressions, equations, statistics, probability, geometry, ratios, proportions. This sounds really serious, and they need to be prepared for it. Today we're talking pretty generally about it, middle school math readiness, and we're going to make sure that you take away what is most important. We have our outlines so we don't ramble too much, because I don't think you want to listen to us ramble that much. All right. Okay. Things that kids are struggling with. So you taught fifth grade math for a long time. You only have kids for a year, and then you send them off. I'm sure that you noticed patterns, year after year, kids are struggling with these things, and my time is up. And these 3 weaknesses in their math skills are going to cause them difficulties in the future. So what were those concerning weaknesses that you frequently saw in your fifth graders going off to middle school?
So I would say there are 3 big weaknesses that you really want to make sure to tighten up with your fifth grader. The first is an understanding of place value. So where a digit is in a number in relation to the other digits, understanding that as I move towards the higher digits, I'm increasing by factors of 10. And as I move lower, I am decreasing by factors of 10.
By factors of 10, you mean tens, 100s, thousands?
Yes.
So the decimal, because I got to remember this too. So the decimal 0.67, the 1 is in the 10th place. Am I wrong? 0.167.
Yes. So if you were looking at 0.167, the 1 is in the 10th place. So it's 1 over 10. That's how much that 1 is worth.
Oh.
The 6 is in the 100th place. So that's 6 over 100. That's how much that 6 is worth. The 7 is in the thousandths place. So if I
This
had the
always
number,
confused me because I'm like 3 places. That's hundreds. This is
no,
like
when
a
you
walk
start
down
going in the
amnesia
other
lane.
direction.
Yeah.
But like, say you were looking at the number 444, knowing that the 4 in the tens place is 10 times bigger than the 4 in the ones place. The 4 in the hundredths place is 100 times bigger than the 4 in the ones place. It's 10 times bigger than the 4 in the tens place. Like, you need to understand that relationship, and you need to understand that pattern.
Okay, so place value.
It matters. The next thing is number fluency. So that's how fluently, so that's accuracy and speed, can I add, subtract, multiply, and divide.
So like for kids for us who like grew up in the 90s, that's like your times tables.
Your times table. Do they know their times tables up to 12?
And can you add and subtract quick in your head?
And can you add and subtract?
Reasonable numbers.
Yeah, I'm not talking about like, can my kid multiply 36.75 by, 12.43 in their head? I'm not.
Division, multiplication, that's usually up to 12, right?
Up to 12. Fluently. Within 12, fluently. Because if you have those like sort of base level skills and they're strong, then you can apply them to harder addition and subtraction, more challenging multiplication and division, because you can do the simple parts fluently.
I'm thinking the first roadblock would be like division. Like if a kid doesn't know, not fractions, like if a kid doesn't know their times tables and their division tables like the back of their hand, fractions are not going to be fun.
It's going to be hard. It's going to be a challenge, because then say you have a mixed number. Like I have 3 and 1/4. And I need to convert that to an improper fraction, which is where the numerator is bigger than the denominator. It's larger. So knowing that I have to take those fourths, and knowing that 3 is representative of 3 groups of 4 fourths. So it's 4 fourths, 4 fourths, 4 fourths. I've got 12 fourths represented in that number 3, that whole number in the front. And then I have to add that to this like 1/4 that's left. It's like I had $3 and I have a quarter, and I want to know how many quarters I have.
That's a good analogy.
In change.
Yeah.
So like if you don't have that numeral fluency, you're really going to struggle with fractions.
Yeah.
With proportions.
And this is stuff that you start learning in like the first, second grade, right? Like fluency, like times tables.
You started learning times tables in, I think, 7th grade now.
Yeah.
It was 3rd grade when I went to school. They felt like they needed to start teaching it earlier.
Yeah.
But it's
concerning in the 5th grade if the kid hasn't mastered it yet, because they've already been learning it for 3 years.
It is.
Yeah, I see. I can think of a lot of examples in like the high school English world.
There's one more thing.
Yes.
And that's application.
Yes.
So if your student is really struggling with word problems, if they can't apply, which if they're struggling with fluency, they're going to have a hard time seeing, like hearing and understanding when a math problem is presented to them in story form. So if I'm being asked something along the lines of like, so-and-so had 5 boxes of kittens and each box had 12 kittens in it, how many kittens did they have? If you don't immediately recognize that as a multiplication problem, that I've got groups of kittens, how many groups I have, and each one has this many things in it, if you don't recognize that as a multiplication problem, that's a problem.
That's a problem. And that's another situation where like they've been doing that for a few years in school, and if you're still struggling with it, that's no bueno. Okay, so you mentioned 3 things: place value, number fluency, and application. So if a parent, all right, parents, we got those 3 things. Now, if our listening parents want to be like, all right, how do I tell if my 5th grader is struggling with place value, number fluency, or application? So like, what does that look like at home? How would a parent know if their kid is struggling with any of those concerning common math weaknesses?
So I think the first thing is if you're doing math homework with your child, you'll see it. You'll see they want to use a calculator, they get frustrated, they make simple mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Like any mistake in addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, fifth graders should not be making those
Right.
mistakes anymore.
Particularly like addition subtraction.
Okay.
Like if I see my fifth grader doing, I use this example. Say they have the number 357 minus 178, and they don't recognize that they have to borrow from the place value next to the ones and tens
Mm-hmm.
to have enough ones and tens to subtract those bottom larger digits from the top. That's going to be like, they fundamentally don't understand the interaction between these two numbers.
So if they don't get borrowing.
Yeah. So like if they don't get borrowing, that's like a big red flag. If you ask them like simple math problems and they like really struggle to figure them out, like that's kind of a red flag. And I would say the biggest thing is if you're looking at their math grades. If your student is coming home and they've got straight A's in math and they take like their standardized assessment for wherever you live and they're scoring in the like advanced, like the 90th percentile, that is not the kid we're talking about. Your kid is fine in math. They are sailing along. You might not see them do their homework. It's probably because it's not hard for them.
It's a different problem.
We'll tackle that next time. But if they're avoiding their math homework,
mm-hmm.
if it takes them a really long time to do, because that's the thing with homework is generally when a teacher is giving like math homework specifically, it's the type, when I gave math homework, it was homework in a fifth grader who is on level. They have all these skills. They should be able to complete it in 15 to 30 minutes.
Not a long time. Yeah.
It shouldn't be a super long time because it's just meant as a review. It's practice. It's not like I'm struggling with this. Like that's not what it's meant for.
Yeah.
So if your kid is like avoiding that homework, they're rushing through it, but you check it, there's a ton of mistakes.
Simple
mistakes. I mean, those are like the biggest red flags. And then if you see those standardized test scores are low, but their grades are high,
then they're probably getting accommodations in class. They're probably getting a lot of help.
Yeah, like their teacher might let them use a calculator to do certain parts of the problem.
But they can't do it independently.
Which
is no bueno.
And it's the same. It's like, think of it this way. If you're fifth grader, we're reading the words, the pigeon will ride the roller coaster. And they're looking at this and they're trying to figure out what each of those letters is and what sound it makes. That's the same as like if you ask them 3 plus 4 and they're like, it's not like 7.
Yeah.
It's the same as if they were sounding out the word pigeon at 11.
Number fluency, reading fluency, pretty similar.
Yes.
Like automaticity.
You want that automaticity.
Yeah. All right. So that's how a parent can recognize it at home. Are they struggling with homework? Does it take them forever to do homework? What do those test scores look like? So why should a parent, well, I mean, there's an obvious reason to this, but I think there's a deeper reason to this. Like, why should a parent care about their kid learning math? Like, what is math actually teaching beyond like rote math facts?
So glad
what's
you asked this.
What's the big picture? We're teachers. We always look at big pictures in education.
And I was always a math nerd. I love math. And I think what I've realized as I've gotten older is that math builds your problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
It builds your ability to learn, apply, and create processes. Math builds your ability to build systems
in your brain.
So if I need to figure out a way, like I'm at my job and we have a problem, and not only do I need to figure out a way to solve this problem right now, I have to figure out a way to put a process in place that I'm going to teach everybody that they are then going to apply routinely so that this problem doesn't continue to occur in the future.
Mm-hmm.
That is a level of analysis, reflection, and
like analyzing problems, analyzing
Yes.
solutions, looking at solutions, looking for patterns. Like I feel like so much of people are always like, when am I going to use this in math? And in like real life, I feel like it's all almost invisible learning.
It is invisible.
Because like you don't know how your brain got so smart. It's all the math you did. It's like I feel like unless you're literally an engineer or like literally a mathematician or like in chemistry, it can be hard to know everything that learning math and math logic and math thinking and problem solving, recognizing everything that it did for your brain. But
it's building your brain muscles.
Yes.
It's building your brain math muscles so that your brain is stronger. It's like a computer that you are programming every day.
Yeah.
And you're making it the strongest computer you can. And I mean, beyond that, like, do you know when someone gives you the correct change? If you have a summer job,
super simple stuff.
Can you give the correct change? Like
without using a calculator?
Without using a calculator. Like if you're 17 years old and something costs $3.75 and I hand you a 5, you should be able to give me change without checking how much it is.
Yes.
If your kid can't do that, that is a problem. And then I would also say math helps you with things like your spatial awareness. Like, will this fit in the trunk of my car?
Yeah, estimating is like a whole chunk of math standards,
right.
Is like estimating values. And that's the way some math is taught these days, right? Like just math. You
want to be able to estimate like what's a reasonable answer.
Yes. Yeah.
Like we used to do these really fun math like videos in my classroom. So I would show something like a pyramid made of pennies. And it's a very tall pyramid. It's like a 5-foot tall pyramid made of pennies. And my students would have to guess how many pennies. And we would think, well, what's in the realm of reasonableness? For this 5-foot tall pyramid, the base might be 5 feet by 5 feet. How many pennies could that possibly be? And like understanding that like 100 pennies is not nearly a big enough number. 5 million pennies might be too big.
Yeah.
But it's probably more reasonable given a pyramid that size.
It's one of those invisible math skills.
But that's an invisible math skill.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. You need to build it.
I want to take a little detour and talk about algebra. So I know this is a 5th grade thing. Algebra is not until like 8th grade, but you got to start with the end in mind when anything in education. So I've heard a statistic that students who fail algebra are statistically at a much higher risk of not graduating on time. So like there's a correlation, like a kid failed algebra, had to take algebra twice, and then like that kid automatically is at a much higher risk of not graduating on time. Mm-hmm. That's a big deal. That's a big red flag, and that happens in the 8th grade. So algebra is a very key moment. Can you connect that to 5th grade math for us? So like I'm the parent of a 5th grader. Why do I need to worry about 5th grade math now? Like why should a 5th grade parent be worried about their kid's success in algebra 3 years from now?
It's a great question.
Like, connect those dots for me.
Absolutely. So if your kid is in 5th grade and they are struggling with number fluency, they're struggling with place value, they're struggling with application, that should be a huge red flag because algebra is all abstract application of number fluency. So if you haven't built those like routines and you don't have strong pattern recognition, you're going to struggle in algebra. So up until algebra, math is mostly just numbers and number fluency.
It's basically getting you ready to do algebra.
It's getting you ready to do algebra. It is. It's building your brain muscles so that they're strong enough to lift up the algebra. And when you get to algebra, math turns far more abstract. So you need to have that concept in your brain that like 3 plus 4 equals 7, right? A plus B equals C. But also B plus A equals C. And how can I apply that to things like actual variables?
Mm-hmm.
Like non-numeral representations of mathematics. And that's what you're going to be asked to do in algebra.
Right.
I think of my favorite algebra task, which is factoring polynomials. So if I'm looking at an equation and it looks like x squared plus 4x plus 8 or minus 8, or
and then you have to break it apart with the
and you have to break it apart with the parentheses, and you have to figure out x plus or minus what times x plus or minus what will give you this. And if you don't have that fluency of knowing, like, my factors of 8 are 1, 2, 4, and 8.
Try doing that with a calculator.
If you don't know that in your head,
how are you even going to think about that?
You're not going to be able to like pull this apart and try to put it back together. You're going to struggle.
It's not going to be fun.
It's going to be really, really hard.
And algebra is not to be like super nerdy, but like algebra is like a gatekeeper to like really cool things. Like if you don't, like if you haven't mastered algebra, like you're not going to have fun in physics. And like physics class can be fun. You're not going to do any chemistry, and like chemistry can be cool. Like it's like a gatekeeper to like way more interesting learning that a kid can have in high school.
It's like if you only ever read storybooks and you never broke into chapter books.
Yeah.
Like, if you make that comparison, it's like your kid is in 10th grade and all they can read is "Don't let the pigeon drive the bus." That's a problem.
Why would that kid like education? Why would that kid like school?
And I'm not saying that this child can't persevere and make something of themselves. They absolutely can. But that is not the reality that any of us want for the young people that
you
we
want
love.
to open doors, not limit doors.
Right.
And like
algebra
opens doors.
It
and
does.
Like not just like mastering algebra. Yeah. I had an idea and then I lost track. Oh yeah. So when you look at your little fifth graders walking out the door, they graduated elementary school, they're off to middle school, bigger and better things, the next step. When you think about their math skills, could you predict like these kids are not going to have fun in algebra? Like in the fifth grade, could you be like, these kids are probably not going to be successful, even though that's 3 years down the road?
Absolutely. Because after elementary school, there's a couple things that happen, right? So first, until we departmentalized for the most of my career, my students just had me all day. So I knew them really well because it was like me and somewhere between 22 and 30 young people just learning stuff. But then if you go to middle school, you go to 6th grade, and now maybe you have 4 teachers throughout the day and they each specialize in a different subject. So now they're not just with you all day. You have to learn 4 different personalities. So then you kind of lose a little bit of that closeness that you might have had at one time.
I definitely see what you're talking about. When a kid has to develop relationships with more adults, it can be harder to learn because it's like, oh, I'm used to having 2 teachers. Now I have 7 teachers. I learn best from this teacher, but I've got 5 other teachers. So like,
and in elementary school, when you have the same class all day, if I've got 15 extra minutes because we wrapped something up early, or whatever might have happened in my day, I can spend that on math.
Yeah, but middle school, there's no extra time. The
There's
bell rings,
no,
you leave.
the bell
And
rings,
you
you
don't see
leave.
that teacher again. With block scheduling, you might not see that teacher again for a couple days.
Right. So you've got that element of middle school.
Yeah.
But then you also have math is getting harder. And just like if a student doesn't know how to read to learn because they're still learning to read, they will struggle in those content heavy subjects like social studies, like science. The same is true for math. If you don't have that fluency, if you don't have that automaticity, if you can't work with fractions, if you can't work with proportions, if you can't work with ratios, you can't figure out the volume of a prism, you don't know how to do any of that, you're going to struggle in sixth and seventh grade, leading you up to algebra. So now you're stunted because
it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse.
Because
it's going to snowball.
You're still learning to read. You're not reading to learn.
And the same thing happens in math.
Yeah.
So we talked about what like what it looks like when a kid is struggling, like how a parent might recognize like, oh, my kid is struggling with these things. But what does a kid who's ready for middle school math look like?
It's a great question. So kid who's ready for middle school math, they're ready for algebra.
Green flags. What are they ready? Yeah.
1, standardized test scores, they're scoring advanced. They're up in their 85th to 99th percentile.
Yeah.
If your kid is scoring there in math, that kid is fine. They are ready.
They're great.
They're doing great. They've got numeral fluency. So you can ask them simple math questions. You can ask them to give you change. You can give them questions about like time. You could have them measure something for you and tell you how much space it takes up. They can do all of those things because not only do they have fluency, but they've got application. They know how to take that math and move it into the real world.
Do something with it in words.
Exactly.
Or take words and turn it into a problem.
They can explain their thinking to you.
So like their homework is done quickly
and accurately.
Not easily, but accurately.
Right.
Yeah.
So they might struggle. I would also say that
struggle is good in education.
They can persist.
Like if your kid's not persisting and struggling a little bit, then they could,
like me.
Like you. Like when you went to college and you're like, oh, this is actually hard now. What?
I didn't know. That's how it was. I didn't understand. I didn't know how to study.
Yeah, guys, struggling is good.
I wish I had struggled while I lived at home with my mom and I could be like, hey, mom.
Because then you learn how to persist and you learn that struggling is normal. And like,
yes.
If you're struggling a little bit, that means like you're in the learning zone.
That's true. Your zone of proximal development.
What is the next thing you should be learning? You should be struggling a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Okay. So let's tie it up here. So if you've got a 4th grader, a 5th grader, a 6th grader at home, what are 2 or 3 things that you would tell that parent to make sure they are doing consistently to make sure that their kid's going to be ready for middle school math and everything beyond? So like 2 or 3 things, what like non-negotiables, what should a parent do if they're like, I want to guarantee that my kid is going to be successful in algebra and ready for beyond? In that elementary, like for those elementary age kids.
So your kids in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, they're not scoring 85th percentile or above on their standardized test. Maybe they're like 75th percentile and below.
Is it important to do something?
It's important. Do something. Do it right now. Do it today. Do it tomorrow. Do it as soon as you can. One of the best things I can suggest are flashcards. They might not like it, but when they are able to when they're able to persist in algebra, when they do well in it, they will thank you. But I would say flashcards.
Thank you, Mom. She tutored the crap out of me. We cried. I cried. She cried. But you know what? I got A's in math after that.
And sometimes that's what it takes. It takes that
just
little
a few
extra.
Tears. But like if you love your kid, you gotta push them because you know it's good for them.
It is like you can't do nothing. It won't get better. You can't learn to read without trying to read. You're not going to build mathematical fluency without intentionally building mathematical fluency.
All right, so we got do something. Could be flashcards, super easy.
Go get the game 24.
Get the game.
Play
24.
it as a family. It's super fun.
Any other suggestions off the top of your mind? Like talk to the teacher.
The best. That's the next thing I would say. So if you notice specifically your kid is scoring low on standardized tests, but they're getting good grades in math at school, they might not be a good test taker. Their teacher will know. Ask them. But if that's not the case, if it's accommodations, you know,
meaning like your kid gets help when they do it, and like the help is helping them earn that grade,
right?
But they couldn't have gotten it independently,
right? Like they got to retake the test, they got to use a calculator for part of it, they got credit for showing all the steps of the problem, whether the answers were right or not, things like that.
Yeah. So understand how much help is my kid getting to earn, like if your kid's scoring in the 70th percentile, but they're bringing home an A on their report card, ask their teacher, like, okay, exactly how much help is my kid getting, and how can I get them to be independent?
Right.
Because you want to be independent, not have a bunch of accommodations helping you.
And that's the best thing, is reach out to that teacher and get the insight into where specifically does your child need support to build that independence, to build that automaticity, to build that fluency.
Yeah, the teacher will happily hand you a stack of worksheets. You'll become their favorite family.
Or they could recommend any number of interventions.
Yeah.
You know?
But you got to do it.
But talk to them. Schedule a meeting. Email them. Message them on Class Dojo. Whatever way you communicate with them, do it today.
Yeah. It's super important because, you know, like you don't think about, you know, high school opportunities when your kid's in 5th grade, but like learning piles on, and like opportunities, doors start closing if a student doesn't have the skills.
Yeah, so in Philadelphia,
to do those things,
we have a number of different tiers of high school. We have citywide schools, we have neighborhood schools, and we have special admit schools. And for some of those schools, a requirement is that you have taken and passed Algebra 1 before you can be considered for admittance. So if you haven't had algebra as an 8th grader, you can't get into some of those really desirable Philadelphia high schools.
Big non-starter, yeah.
And if you fail algebra as an 8th grader, you're really going to, even if you get into a Masterman or a Carver Engineering and Science, or a GAMP, you know, any of our like flagship schools, you're going to struggle. It's going to be hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I honestly have to look into it. I don't know if you can fail Algebra 1 and still get into one of those schools.
I would have to guess no.
I would think your standardized test scores wouldn't be high enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think the same. All right. I think we did it.
Are we done?
Yeah. If you have any other questions for us about elementary math, middle school math, please put them in the comments. Or if there's a topic in elementary school math, middle school math that you want us to do in another podcast, we would love your input. And that's it.
That's all. Like, share, comment, subscribe.